They told her to step away from the trauma bay, while the monitor was still screaming. The sound cut through the corridor, sharp and unforgiving. A single high note that meant someone was seconds from dying. Sarah Mitchell stood frozen beside the gurney, one hand already gloved, the other hovering inches above torn skin. Blood pooled on the sheet. The smell of iron hung heavy in the air. She did not look at the man shouting her name. She did not look because she already knew who it was. "Mitchell," Dr. Brian Collins snapped again, louder this time. His voice carried the brittle edge of authority borrowed too early. "You're not cleared for this. Move." Around them, the emergency department hesitated. A respiratory therapist paused mid-step. A nurse's fingers tightened around a chart. No one spoke. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice like a bad omen. Sarah shifted her weight. Her right leg lagged a fraction behind the left. Just enough to be noticed. Just enough to be judged. She felt the familiar burn in her hip, the metal deep inside reacting to the cold air. She breathed through it. Slow. Controlled. "I'm stabilizing him," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. It landed wrong. Collins laughed under his breath. Not kind, not loud. "This isn't a charity shift. We need people who can move." The words stayed in the room, heavy, unchallenged. From the doorway, Dr. Helen Moore watched everything. She said nothing yet. Her eyes moved from the bleeding man to Sarah's steady hands to the slight tremor in Collins' jaw. The monitor screamed again. Time was bleeding out, and Sarah Mitchell did not move. Dr. Helen Moore stepped forward before anyone else could find their voice. Her shoes made no sound on the polished floor, but the room felt her anyway. "If you have something useful to add, Brian, add it," she said. Her tone was level, almost mild, which made it worse. "If not, get out of the way." Collins turned, surprised, the color rising fast in his face. "She's a liability," he said, gesturing too sharply, like the word itself offended him. "If this goes bad—" "It already is bad," Moore cut in, eyes never leaving the patient. "That's why we're here." Sarah moved then. Not fast, precise. Her hands went to work like they'd done this 1,000 times in places that never made the news. Gauze, pressure, a calm assessment with eyes that missed nothing. The patient gasped, wet and shallow. The monitor stuttered. Sarah leaned in, close enough to smell burned fabric and fear. "Stay with me," she said softly, not asking. The man's fingers twitched. Somewhere behind her, someone whispered, "She's good," like a secret. Collins hovered, restless, jaw tight. He watched her leg, not her hands. He waited for a mistake. It didn't come. Moore saw it all. The steadiness, the control. The way Sarah blocked out the room until only the work existed. This wasn't training. This was memory. When the patient finally stabilized enough to move, Moore straightened. She looked at Collins, then at the staff gathered in a loose, silent ring. "Clear the bay," she said. Then quieter, just for herself. And someone remember her name. The announcement came over the intercom like a punch to the chest. Attention all emergency staff. Mass casualty incident inbound. Naval training accident. Multiple critical injuries. Estimated arrival 12 minutes. The words echoed down the corridor, stripping the room of breath. Chairs scraped back. Coffee was abandoned mid-sip. Someone swore under their breath. Not loud enough to be brave, not quiet enough to hide fear. Sarah felt it before she moved. The shift in the air. The way the hospital tightened around itself. Her fingers curled once, then relaxed. 12 minutes was an eternity, and nothing at all. She reached for a fresh pair of gloves. The tremor in her hip sharpened, a warning flare she ignored. Across the bay, Collins stared at the ceiling speakers as if they'd insulted him personally. "We're not staffed for this," he muttered. "We're never staffed for this," Moore said, already walking, already issuing orders that snapped people into motion. Gurneys were lined up. Trauma carts rolled. The waiting room television was shut off mid-laugh, the sound dying like it understood the disrespect. Sarah took her place without being told. Someone tried to hand her paperwork. She waved it away. Her eyes tracked exits, equipment, space. She was counting angles now, not minutes. Outside, sirens began to rise, one voice becoming many. Collins swallowed hard. He looked at Sarah again. Really looked this time, and saw something that didn't fit the story he'd written. Calm. Readiness. A focus that did not come from textbooks. Moore caught his glance and said nothing. She didn't need to. The doors slid open. The first ambulance hit the bay, and the night broke wide open. They came in fast and wrong. Bodies strapped down, uniforms torn, the smell of fuel and blood riding in with the cold night air. Sarah took the first gurney without asking. A young sailor, early 20s, ash on his face, chest rising uneven, one side lagging like it had forgotten how. She was already listening before anyone spoke, already reading the story written in bruises and breath. "Pressure's dropping," someone called. The monitor answered with a frantic rhythm. Collins stepped in, gloves snapping onto his hands. "Get imaging," he said, too quick, buying time. Sarah shook her head once. Small, certain. She leaned in, eyes on the sailor's neck, the subtle pull where it shouldn't be. Her fingers pressed, felt the tightness, the wrongness. "We don't have time," she said. Her voice didn't rise. It cut. Collins bristled. "You don't make that call." The sailor coughed, wet and weak. The monitor screamed louder. Sarah's hand was already reaching, already selecting what she needed, like muscle memory had taken over. Moore was there now, watching closely, saying nothing. She saw the hesitation flash across Collins's face. She saw Sarah's hands, steady as stone. "Move," Sarah said. Not angry, not pleading, command. Collins stepped back before he realized he'd done it. The needle went in clean. A hiss of trapped air escaped, sharp and sudden. The sailor dragged in a real breath, deep and desperate. The monitor slowed. The room exhaled. Silence followed. Heavy. Charged. Collins stared at her like the floor had shifted under his feet. Moore met Sarah's eyes and nodded once. whatever this night was about to become. The rules had already changed. The next gurney carried a different weight, older, heavier, the kind of presence that bent the room before anyone said his name. His uniform was cut away in fast, brutal lines, dark with blood and dirt ground deep into the fabric. The insignia caught the light for half a second, and then disappeared under gloved hands. Commander James Carter, early 40s. The word commander moved through the bay like a ripple, changing how people stood, how they spoke. Sarah didn't look at his rank. She looked at his breathing, shallow, guarded. Pain held tight behind his teeth. As they transferred him, his eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with effort. He scanned faces, machines, ceiling lights. Then he saw her. His gaze locked. Something old and feral cut through the haze. "Nightingale," he rasped. The name barely made it past his lips, but it landed like a dropped plate. A nurse froze mid-motion. Collins's head snapped up. Moore stilled. Sarah's hand tightened on the rail for a fraction of a second. Just enough. Then she leaned in, professional, controlled. "You're in a hospital," she said. "Stay with me." Carter's mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile pulling at one corner. "Knew you'd show up," he whispered, like this was inevitable. Blood pressure dipped again. Orders flew. But the room had shifted. Collins watched the way Carter tracked Sarah, the trust without explanation, the recognition that didn't belong to tonight. Moore felt it too. This wasn't coincidence. This was history bleeding back into the present. And whatever Sarah Mitchell had been before this job, it was no longer buried. Carter's grip found her wrist as they cut away the last of his uniform. Not hard, grounding. His fingers were rough, scarred, familiar with pain. "You're still limping," he said, voice thin but certain. The room went very still. Sarah eased his hand back to the mattress, gentle but firm. "You're still bleeding," she replied. "Focus on that." The exchange was quiet, but it carried. People heard it. Collins cleared his throat. "Let's keep this professional," he said. Too late. His eyes flicked between them, searching for context, for control. Carter ignored him. His gaze never left Sarah. "You dragged me 7 miles, he said, breath hitching. "Wouldn't let go. Told me if I died, you'd kill me yourself." A few nervous laughs died before they were born. No one moved. Moore stepped closer, reading the room like a seasoned judge. "Commander," she said, calm and respectful. "We need to know where it hurts." Carter nodded once, then winced. "Left side," he said, "and everywhere else." His eyes softened when he looked back at Sarah. "She saved my men," he added, "all of them who made it home." Silence pressed in, thick and uncomfortable. Collins's face drained of color. The story he'd built about Sarah cracked, then collapsed. Moore felt the weight of it settle. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't luck. This was earned. Sarah went back to work, hands steady, voice even. But the past had already stepped into the light, and it wasn't leaving quietly. Someone finally broke the silence, but not with a question. It was a sound, a slow breath leaving Moore's chest as if a piece had just clicked into place. She looked at Sarah differently now, not with suspicion or surprise, but recognition. Collins felt it too. He stood off to the side, useless hands hovering, watching authority slip through his fingers without a single word being said. "I know that name," one of the senior nurses murmured, not meant to travel far. "Nightingale. They used to whisper it in the VA forums." Another shook her head. "That file got sealed years ago." The words moved like a low current, quiet but impossible to stop. Sarah heard none of it, or she heard all of it and chose not to react. Her focus stayed on Carter's vitals, on the slow fight happening under her hands. "They gave her a medal," Carter said suddenly, voice rough, cutting through the murmur. "Then they erased her." Collins flinched. "That's not how discharges work," he said, reflex more than belief. Carter turned his head just enough to look at him. "That's how it works when someone sees things they weren't supposed to see." The monitor beeped. Steady, but fragile. Moore leaned in closer. "We're going to get you upstairs," she said. Carter nodded, then looked back at Sarah. "You always do," he said. She met his gaze for a heartbeat. No pride, no apology. Just truth. Around them, the emergency department kept moving, but the balance had shifted. Sarah Mitchell was no longer invisible, and everyone in that room knew it. The doors closed behind Carter's gurney, and the room exhaled like it had been holding its breath too long. Blood was wiped away. Fresh sheets pulled tight. New alarms took the place of old ones. But the quiet that settled wasn't relief. It was calculation. Eyes kept drifting back to Sarah, then away, then back again, as if looking too long might change something permanent. Collins broke first. "If any of that is true," he said, low and tight, "it should be in her file." He said file like it was a shield. Moore didn't look at him. She was watching Sarah strip off bloody gloves, her movements efficient, unhurried. "Files tell you what someone was allowed to be," Moore said. "Not what they are." Collins swallowed. He nodded once, like he understood, then realized he didn't. A man in a grey suit stood just beyond the glass wall, hands in his pockets, no badge, no hurry. He hadn't been there before, or maybe he had, and no one had noticed. His gaze slid over the department, cataloguing faces, exits, the way people stood after a shock. It paused on Sarah, held, then moved on. Sarah felt it anyway, the prickle between her shoulders, the old instinct rising. She finished her chart, clipped it shut, and handed it off without comment. Moore caught the exchange through the glass, her jaw setting. Whatever had been buried hadn't stayed buried. Someone had come to check the dirt. He intercepted her near the waiting area, just far enough from the noise to feel intentional. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, like he was confirming a note he'd already memorized. His smile was polite in the way men learn when consequences are optional. "Daniel Reeves, Department of Defense." He showed a wallet, quick and practiced, then tucked it away before she could study it. Cameras watched. He knew it. She knew he knew. "I'm on shift," Sarah said. She didn't slow. He matched her stride without trying. "This won't take long," Reeves replied. His voice carried the calm of someone used to rooms going quiet when he spoke. "You handled yourself well tonight. Textbook, even." He glanced toward the trauma bays. That decompression. Clean, decisive. The compliment landed wrong. It always did. They stopped near the glass doors. Night pressed close outside, reflected in the panes like a second room. "There was an understanding," Reeves said, softer now. "You keep a low profile. We keep your life uncomplicated." His eyes flicked, just once, to her phone in her pocket. "Your sister enjoys campus, doesn't she? Late nights. Coffee by the East Gate." He smiled again. Not kind, not cruel. Certain. Sarah felt the old cold settle in her chest, the kind that meant the rules had changed without warning. "You don't get to say her name," she said. Reeves held up a hand, placating. "No threats," he said. "Just reminders." He stepped back, already done. "Let tonight pass. We'll talk later." He turned and vanished into the flow, leaving behind a silence that felt earned. Sarah stood still for one breath. Then she moved, jaw set, knowing the night wasn't finished with her yet. The voice didn't belong to the hospital. "Attention, this is a federal operation. Please remain where you are." The words rolled across the waiting room, flat and final, cutting through murmurs and ringing phones. People froze mid-step. A television was muted too late. Jackets with yellow letters moved in clean lines through the doors. FBI. Daniel Reeves reappeared at the center of it, hands lifting slowly, irritation flickering before it smoothed into something practiced. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, loud enough to be heard, calm enough to sound rehearsed. A woman in a dark blazer stepped forward, badge already out. "Daniel Reeves," she replied. "You're under arrest for federal weapons violations and making credible threats against civilians." The cuffs closed with a sound that carried. Sarah watched from the edge of the crowd, pulse steady, jaw tight. Reeves's eyes found her. Not anger, not fear. Calculation adjusting to loss. He smiled once, small and knowing, as if the game had only shifted boards. Then he was gone, pulled toward the exit, voices rising behind him like static. The room exhaled too early. Relief spread fast. It shouldn't have. Sarah's phone vibrated in her pocket. Once. Then again. She didn't look at it yet. She didn't need to. Somewhere beyond the glass, the night pressed closer. And whatever Reeves had been holding back no longer had a reason to wait. The photo loaded before she could stop it. Emily. Mid-step. Backpack strap cutting across her shoulder. Campus brick blurred behind her. And there, clean and unmistakable, a red dot resting over her chest. The message underneath was short. "We are not done." The waiting room noise fell away. Sarah felt it like pressure in her ears, the world narrowing to the glow of her screen. Her fingers went numb. Somewhere nearby, Dr. Moore was speaking to the agents, her voice firm, controlled. Collins stood a few feet away, staring at Sarah like he finally understood what fear actually looked like. She turned, already moving. "I need a phone," she said. Not loud. Absolute. Moore was there instantly, eyes flicking once to the screen before hardening. "Where is she?" "Campus," Sarah replied. "Near the east gate. She walks there every night." Moore was already signaling, already pulling someone closer. Orders rippled outward, fast and quiet. Sarah dialed. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. The red dot burned into her vision. This wasn't leverage. This was a clock. She felt the old clarity settle in, the kind that came when panic stopped being useful. They weren't warning her. They were daring her. She lifted her head. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "They want me," she said, "and they're running out of patience." Sirens didn't wail this time. They cut clean through traffic, lights flashing without sound, urgency wrapped in restraint. Sarah sat in the front passenger seat, hands flat on her knees, eyes fixed on the road as the hospital fell away behind them. Dr. Moore drove like she meant it, jaw tight, both hands steady on the wheel. In the back, James Carter shifted with careful anger, one hand braced against his stitches, the other gripping the seat as if it were a rifle stock. "They know your habits," Carter said, voice low. "That means they've been watching longer than tonight." Sarah nodded once. "They always do." Her phone buzzed again. Another message. No photo this time. South stairwell. 5 minutes. Come alone. The words were neat, confident. She didn't show it to anyone. She didn't need to. The campus rose ahead, lights scattered across dark brick and glass. Police cruisers blocked the main drive. Students clustered in confused knots, phones out, whispers spreading faster than instructions. Moore slowed, turning down a service road that curved behind the buildings. "You're not walking into this blind," she said. "I won't allow it." Sarah looked at her then. Really looked. "You already are," she replied. Carter leaned forward, breath tight. "You won't be alone," he said. It wasn't a promise. It was a fact. The car rolled to a stop near a shadowed loading dock. Sarah opened the door. The night smelled like concrete and cut grass. Somewhere nearby, a clock was counting down. The stairwell swallowed the light behind her, concrete walls breathing cold as she descended. Each step echoed once, then died, like the building was listening. The smell hit halfway down. Gas. Faint but real. Sarah slowed, hand brushing the rail, eyes tracking shadows that didn't belong. At the bottom, the door waited, unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, the basement opened into low ceilings and rows of shelves, old journals and boxed equipment stacked like forgotten witnesses. Emily sat at a table under a bare bulb, wrists taped, eyes wide and locked on the doorway. Behind her stood a man Sarah hadn't seen in years, older now, grayer at the edges, calm in the way only practiced monsters ever are. Colonel Richard Hale. A pistol rested against Emily's temple. In his other hand, a small device blinked red. Steady, patient. "You always were punctual," Hale said. His voice filled the room without effort. That's why this works. Sarah stepped forward, hands open. "Let her go," she said. Hale smiled, almost fond. "You still think this is about mercy?" He tightened his grip on the device. "This is about control." Emily moved. Not panic. Choice. She shoved hard, chair tipping just enough. Hale shifted. The gun swung wide for half a breath. A shot cracked from the shadows. Hale fell, blood blooming dark. Sarah was already there, on her knees, clamping his hand around the switch. "Don't let go," she said, iron calm. Boots thundered. The room flooded with voices. The red light went dark, and the night finally broke. Morning found the hospital wrapped in pale light. Cameras clustered beyond the doors like patient birds. Sarah stood at the threshold, scrubs stained, posture steady, the city waking behind the glass. Emily slept upstairs, safe for now. Carter was back where surgeons wanted him, stubborn and alive. Moore watched from just inside, arms folded, saying nothing, trusting the moment to hold. Sarah stepped forward and the noise surged, microphones rising, red lights blinking like small stars. She didn't flinch. She named herself. She named what she had been and what she was now. A nurse, a medic, a witness. She spoke about choices made far above ordinary people and the cost paid by those forced to bleed in the dark. She promised she wouldn't disappear again. The words landed clean. They stayed. When she turned back inside, the corridor felt different. Quieter. Not safer, just honest. She walked past familiar rooms without counting steps, past faces that met her eyes and didn't look away. Work waited. So did consequences. She took a breath and kept going. If this story moved you, show your support by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment that says, "Stand with truth."